All right, welcome to Studio Stories. I'm Jesse Owen Astin, JOA. I'm a recording artist, producer, engineer, songwriter, music guy, and I'm going to tell you a cautionary tale today. Okay, so the story starts back in 2004, 2005. Me and my father had built a studio on the west side of Atlanta off of Fulton Industrial Boulevard. If you're from Atlanta, you'll know about Fulton Industrial. So anyway, I'm producing bands out of this studio, and the first real production that I got to do was for a band called When Rocky Beat the Russian. And when I say that I really got to do it, I mean we shared an equal vision of how this record was going to be made. It was a great thing because they were willing to pay me to, do what I felt was the right thing to do with their band, which is to create this loud, abrasive, violent type of record. And it was a great opportunity. And the first time I got to really flex and experiment and try all sorts of things, whatever I wanted to try. So throughout this process, we are experimenting with tons of different things, like putting different frequencies under kick drum samples, and we are recording things to, at one point we had baseball bats and we were beating a dumpster and recording that to reel, and then using that as a snare drum in one of the songs. We were dragging chains through the warehouse, just doing weird shit, whatever we wanted to do. It was great. And then for whatever reason, I get the brilliant idea to use a Ouija board. So we are sitting around, we're partying, we're drinking like we normally would at a session at this time. And we're like, dude, let's do it right now. Let's make this happen. Let's do the Ouija board thing. So the idea was we do the Ouija board thing, we'd record it and see what kind of shit would happen. So we print the Ouija board off the internet. We find a website that has a Ouija board, we print it, we tape it together, we have a shot glass that we're using as the planchet. And there's one room in the studio that had particularly weirder energy than the others. So we went in there and we set the thing up, we turned the lights down, we set up the reel-to-reel, we set up a camcorder to capture the whole thing, and then we sit in a circle, we light some candles, got some incense going. We put our hands on this thing, and the whole energy of the room just starts to shift. The whole thing just becomes, I just remember it feeling electric, my whole body was just ugh. Anyway, so we have our hands on this thing, and sure enough, it starts to move. And it starts to move in sort of arbitrary directions. It's not really doing anything. So we're like, okay, well, what do we do? We're going to ask it a question. So we're like, do you like the music? And it moved to yes. And at that point, we were like, okay, this is really fucked up, because if we're dealing with a spirit that likes the type of music that we've been creating for the past 3 months, this is maybe not the best spirit to be involved with. So nothing else really happened until it started spelling out one of the band members' initials. It goes MJH, MJH, over and over again. So we all get freaked out. We turn the lights on. We're like, okay, I don't know what that was, but I think it's time for us to go to bed. So I lock the door, and I'm like, no one go in there for the rest of the night. Just stay away, right? So I'm laying in bed later that night. We're all kind of unwinding from this experience that we just had, because I've heard people talk about Ouija boards my whole life, but I didn't think really anything would happen, to be completely honest. I was just fucking around. Dummy. So anyway, I'm laying in bed, and at this time I'm texting a lot with this girl. I'm like, fuck, I left my phone in that room. So I grab my key, And you have to understand, this key is like a industrial strength key. It's like made out of steel. You know what I mean? I throw the key, I put the key in the door thing of the room that we were just in, and this fucking thing just fucking melted in my hand. The rest of the key got stuck in there. And I was just like, I mean, I still get chilled. I have goosebumps right now just talking about it. This fucking thing broke off in there. I was like, okay, that's it. Going to bed. I'm not getting the phone. Who gives a shit, right? So next day, we wake up, and I need to go in there and get the shit, and we need to check the camcorder and the reel-to-reel and all that. So I get some tweezers, and I pull the rest of the key out, and I managed to get the door unlocked. Go in there, get my phone, get all the stuff. We check the reel-to-reel recorder. We check the camcorder. They're gone. There's nothing there. They're just empty. And we had been using this reel-to-reel throughout this process, and it had been recording shit this entire time, but for whatever reason, not happening, right? So from that point on, shit just continues to get weird during these sessions. We had a session file for the main song on the record that went missing. So we had all the audio files, but we didn't have the session file that would make it make sense. So all we had to work with on that one song was just the mix, the working mix that we had, and that's the one that's on the record now. There's also like this weird sound of a girl at the end of one of the songs, and it sounds like she's crying, and none of us know where it came from. Like, there was no one else in the room at this particular time, and then I listened at the very end of this thing, and there was like a girl clearly sobbing at the end of this thing. It was like fucking weird, right? The radio, TVs would turn on automatically. Crazy shit, right? In my personal life, things were going awry, right? Like relationships with my family, relationships with people that I was in, like everything just seemed to have been like fucked. So eventually the situation there had gotten so tense in my life, and we had pretty much finished the record, and I ended up moving to LA to further my career, do other things. And a few years after all this had happened, I came back to visit Atlanta, and I went back to the very studio. And I was just curious. I wanted to walk in that room and see what was going on in there. So I walk in the room, and it's literally full of chairs, stacked from you can't even walk in the room because it's just crammed full of chairs. Like somebody was like, nah, fuck that room. Like no one needs to go in there. Ceiling tiles were falling down from the top. It was like the room was useless. I don't know. It sounds random, but to me, it had like a really internalized meaning, because I was like, okay, this room is just fucked. So anyway, it was a really weird experience. I'm glad we had it, and it's on the record. And the record is like a really bizarre. They even used a Ouija board for the cover of the album. It's called "Reason Your Way Out" by When Rocky Beat the Russian. You should check it out. It's intense as fuck. Listen for the girl at the end of one of the songs. But the moral of the story is, don't fuck around with Ouija boards. And furthermore, don't fuck around with shit that you don't understand. Because when you don't understand it, you can't respect something that you don't understand. And I don't necessarily know for sure if supernatural shit happens or not, but I do know that I was fucking around with something that I didn't understand. And I think there's a lot more to this universe that we might not ever understand. So if you don't understand it, just leave it the fuck alone. Just leave it alone, man. Don't fuck with Ouija boards. This is Studio Stories.